politicians are pushing a punitive response that will only make homelessness worse. We need to get these people off the streets so they can start healing after years of trauma of living outside.
Think homelessness is only a problem in big cities? Think again. The reality is that it's quietly spreading into the suburbs, where picture-perfect neighborhoods hide a much darker truth. And it's not just skyrocketing housing costs. Fentanyl is making the crisis even worse, driving more people onto the streets. In this video, we're breaking down the myths about suburban homelessness, the ones most of us have believed for too long. We'll take you beyond the headlines to reveal what's really happening in places you'd never expect. From families fighting to keep a roof over their heads to the devastating grip of addiction, these are stories that demand attention. Stay with us, because what you think you know about homelessness in the suburbs is about to be turned upside down.
Well, I've been stuck on this fentanyl for a few years now.
What could you say it's been like, being a fentanyl addict?
Oh man, it's a roller coaster. You get your good times and your bad times, but then again, everything in life is like that. You know, jobs, what, you know. But I would say it's a more intense roller coaster than a
The suburban dream, neat lawns, picket fences, and quiet streets, feels worlds apart from the image we have of homelessness. But here's a startling truth. According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's 2025 annual report, 37% of the homeless population in America's suburbs live unsheltered. That's a higher rate than in many urban areas. How can this be? Why is homelessness so hidden in the suburbs? And why are we overlooking it? In cities, homelessness is visible, on street corners, under freeway, overpasses, in plain sight. But in the suburbs, it takes a different form, one that's harder to see. Families sleep in their cars, individuals camp in wooded areas, and others move from couch to couch, relying on friends until the welcome runs out. The crisis is still there, but it hides in the shadows of neighborhoods built on the promise of stability. Take Julie's story. She was once a homemaker in suburban San Diego, living what many would call a typical middle-class life. But when she lost her job, everything unraveled. Rent soared to $2,500 a month for a modest apartment, money she no longer had. Within weeks, Julie and her 2 children were living out of their minivan, their belongings stuffed into trash bags, a painful reminder of the stability they had lost. Julie's struggle is not unique. In many suburbs, wages simply don't match the rising cost of living. In Kane County, Illinois, for example, a family must earn $34 an hour just to afford a 2-bedroom apartment, yet most households earn far less. How can people survive when even basic housing is out of reach? The fentanyl epidemic only deepens the crisis. This synthetic opioid, 50 to 100 times more powerful than morphine, has taken root in suburban communities. In 2024, the CDC reported more than 70,000 overdose deaths, many tied to fentanyl. With limited access to addiction treatment in suburban areas, this epidemic adds a hidden layer of suffering to an already dire situation. So why do we keep ignoring what's happening in our own backyards? And how long will it take before we confront the truth of suburban homelessness? These are the questions we must face if we hope to find real solutions. The reality of homelessness in America's suburbs is often hidden beneath misconceptions that create indifference, or worse, blame. By challenging these myths with facts and stories, we can begin to see the issue clearly and move closer to real solutions. Let's start with one of the most common myths. Myth 1, homelessness only happens in big cities, not suburbs. Many people assume that suburbs, with their neat lawns and quiet streets, are untouched by homelessness. But the truth is very different. According to the National Alliance to End Homelessness, 37% of homeless individuals in suburban areas live unsheltered, often in cars or makeshift camps. In places like Orange County, California, families crowd into motels or park overnight in Walmart lots hidden from view. Unlike cities, suburbs often lack shelters and soup kitchens, making the crisis far less visible. Take Sarah, a single mother living in a Virginia suburb. She and her child stay in a tent tucked behind a strip mall, invisible to most who pass by. Her story is just one among many. Homelessness is not confined to urban centers. It is spreading through the suburbs, fueled by rising housing costs and a lack of public services. The suburbs have become a silent battleground for families trying to survive. Homelessness is here, and it's time we face it for what it is. Myth 2. Suburban homeless people are outsiders, not locals. One of the most persistent misconceptions about suburban homelessness is that those experiencing it are outsiders, people drifting in from the cities in search of services. The reality tells a very different story. Most of the homeless in suburban communities are longtime residents who simply fell on hard time. A 2025 study by the UCSF Benioff Homelessness and Housing Initiative found that 90% of homeless individuals in California, including its suburbs, were born in the state, and 75% became homeless in the very county where they lived.
It's a hard life. There's a lot of people that don't like us down here, but we can be in the parks in your neighborhood, or we can be down here, you know.
So it's very dangerous to go out there at nighttime. So, yeah, actually, that's why baby he got killed, but maybe they would have came on time. He maybe would have been still living, but they didn't make it in time, and he died. So people get shot, people get killed, and coyotes. We get bit over there. There's snakes, and there's all kinds of things that going on over there. It's so scary living down there. You don't even know how scary it is.
In suburban regions like Kane County, Illinois, the math just doesn't add up. The income required to afford a 2-bedroom apartment is far beyond the reach of many working families. Locals like John, a former mechanic, can lose everything after a medical emergency or a sudden layoff. These are not strangers moving in, they are our neighbors, people who once lived stable lives in the same communities. The truth is that homelessness in the suburbs is not imported from elsewhere. It is driven by systemic pressures that push local residents out of their home. Myth 3. Homelessness is mainly caused by addiction or mental illness. One of the most damaging myths about homelessness is the belief that it's primarily caused by addiction or mental illness. While these struggles do affect some unhoused people, they are often the result, not the root cause, of losing stable housing. As Greg Colburn and Clayton Aldern argue in Homelessness is a Housing Problem, the real driver is the lack of affordable housing. In suburban areas, 70% of low-income households spend more than half of their income on rent. That leaves them just one crisis, like a job loss or medical bill, away from being pushed out of their homes. Consider Harold, a retired postal worker in his 70s. After decades of service, his fixed income simply couldn't keep up with rising rents, and he was eventually forced from his apartment. Harold has no history of addiction or mental illness, yet he now sleeps in his car. Research shows that only about 26–38% of homeless individuals struggle with substance abuse, and for many, addiction comes after the trauma of homelessness. The truth is clear: unaffordable housing is the root issue, but too often we choose to blame individuals instead of confronting the systemic failures that created the crisis. Myth 4. The homeless are lazy and choose this life. Another damaging stereotype is that homeless individuals are lazy or have chosen this path. The reality is very different. Many are employed but still cannot survive under the weight of low wages and soaring living costs. A 2025 NYU study revealed that 59% of Americans live just one paycheck away from homelessness, a warning that hits especially hard in the suburbs, where rents have skyrocketed. Families with children, often as young as 9, make up a significant portion of the suburban homeless. In Fairfax County, Virginia, even full-time workers like teachers' aides and retail clerks have been forced to sleep in their cars because rent is simply out of reach. Take Maria, a part-time cashier who moves from couch to couch with her son. She hasn't chosen this life. She's trapped in a system where her wages cannot keep pace with the cost of living. The truth is, most people experiencing homelessness are desperate to escape it. In fact, research shows that 84% of those given stable housing exit homelessness within weeks. It's not a lack of effort or will, it's a lack of opportunity and affordable housing that keeps them stuck. The problem lies in the system, not in personal failure. Myth 5. Services attract more homeless people to suburbs. A common fear in suburban communities is that building shelters or offering services will draw homeless people from outside the area, turning quiet neighborhoods into magnets for vagrancy. This not-in-my-backyard mindset is not supported by the facts. According to the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, Housing First programs, which provide immediate housing without preconditions, help 93% of participants remain stably housed and reduce community costs by 1/3 compared to criminalization. In places like San Diego County, small-scale housing projects have proven effective in reducing homelessness without attracting outsiders. These services meet the needs of local residents, helping people like Tom, a former construction worker, rebuild his life in the same community he once called home. Despite strong evidence supporting these programs, resistance often remains fueled by fear and misunderstanding. The truth is simple. Services don't worsen the problem, they solve it. Instead of pushing back, we should welcome solutions that strengthen communities and extend compassion to those who need it most. As we peel back the myths of suburban homelessness, another layer of crisis comes into focus: the devastating role of fentanyl. This synthetic opioid has swept across communities like a silent storm, 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine, and now one of the leading causes of overdose deaths. In 2024 alone, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported more than 70,000 fatalities tied to synthetic opioids. In suburban areas, where treatment and addiction services are often scarce, fentanyl has turned a difficult situation into a deadly one. It doesn't just worsen the struggle of homelessness, it creates a vicious cycle, pulling individuals and families deeper into despair while cutting off their path to stability. Fentanyl's spread into the suburbs is especially insidious. Often disguised as prescription pills or laced into street drugs, it ensnares people who never saw it coming, from teenagers experimenting for the first time to adults desperate for relief from chronic pain. In places like Orange County, California, 20–30% of the homeless population struggles with substance abuse, with fentanyl now taking the lead. For many, the drug follows homelessness rather than causes it. Take Maria, a single mother in a Maryland suburb. After losing her job and her apartment, she began living in her car. Overwhelmed by despair, she turned to fentanyl as a way to numb the pain. Her story reveals a larger truth. The instability of homelessness magnifies vulnerability to addiction as people seek escape from the trauma of life on the streets. Yet suburban communities remain poorly equipped to handle this crisis. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, access to addiction treatment in the suburbs is 40% lower than in urban areas. Narcan, the overdose reversal drug, is hard to find, and rehab centers are often miles away. For people like James, a former electrician in Virginia, this gap means cycling endlessly between homelessness and relapse, with no lifeline in sight. Stigma makes it worse, as addiction is too often seen as a moral failing instead of a public health emergency. How can we hope to break this cycle when resources are so scarce? Fentanyl not only intensifies the suffering of the homeless, it also exposes the urgent need for stronger, targeted interventions in suburban America. As homelessness spreads deeper into America's suburbs, intensified by the fentanyl epidemic, what steps is the government taking to respond? Both federal and local initiatives offer some hope, though obstacles remain. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has promoted the Housing First model, which prioritizes providing stable housing before tackling issues like addiction or unemployment. According to the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, these programs have a 93% success rate in helping participants remain stably housed, while also easing the strain on local communities. In suburban areas, smaller-scale Housing First efforts have already shown promise. In King County, Washington, projects built on this model have helped families like Maria's regain stability, proving a simple but powerful truth. Housing is the foundation for recovery. Federally, HUD continues to allocate funds to support affordable housing in the suburbs, but years of budget cuts have strained these efforts. Between 2020 and 2025, federal housing assistance for suburban areas dropped by 15%, according to the National Alliance to End Homelessness. This decline has left local governments with fewer tools to build shelters or subsidize rent, forcing many communities to rely on patchwork solutions. Meanwhile, the CDC has invested in opioid response programs like Narcan distribution and mobile treatment units, which have reduced fentanyl-related deaths by 15% in suburban areas of San Diego. These initiatives show promise, but they're still too limited to meet the scale of the crisis. At the local level, some suburbs are experimenting with creative approaches. In Fairfax County, Virginia, officials have partnered with nonprofits to develop microhousing units and expand access to addiction counseling. Yet progress often stalls because of resistance from residents. This not-in-my-backyard mindset reflects fears that shelters or treatment centers will attract outsiders despite clear evidence to the contrary. In fact, data from the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness shows that communities with strong support services reduce homelessness without drawing people from elsewhere. The challenge is bridging the gap, aligning federal and local resources while overcoming fear and stigma. Without greater investment and stronger community support, the cycle of homelessness and addiction will continue to grind on. The pressing question remains: what will it take to ensure every suburb has the tools and the will to act? As I reflect on the spread of homelessness into America's suburbs, I'm haunted by how quietly it has invaded places once seen as safe havens. Growing up in a quiet Midwestern suburb, I believe that neat homes and close-knit neighborhoods guaranteed stability. But one memory lingers. Passing a family living in their car at a gas station, their weary faces so familiar, as if I'd seen them at school events or the local grocery store. That moment shattered my assumptions. Homelessness isn't just an urban issue. It exists in our own neighborhoods, hidden but undeniable. The stories I've uncovered since echo that memory. Families undone by skyrocketing rents. Individuals pulled into fentanyl's deadly grip. They remind us how fragile security really is. What unsettles me most is our tendency to look away. We ignore the tents tucked into wooded lots and point fingers at individuals instead of confronting systemic failures. Yet the facts are clear. 37% of the suburban homeless are unsheltered, and 90% are local residents. More than 70,000 fentanyl-related overdose deaths in 2024 underscore the urgency for real solutions. Programs like Housing First, which boasts a 93% success rate in keeping people stably housed, prove that dignity and stability are possible. As someone who values community, I draw hope from the small victories, families rehoused, lives saved by Narcan. But those wins are not enough. This crisis demands bolder action, more funding, less stigma, and a commitment to redefine the suburban promise. True community means making sure every neighbor has a home and a chance to rebuild. Conclusion: homelessness in America's suburbs, darkened by the deadly reach of fentanyl, is a crisis we can no longer turn away from. By shattering myths, facing the opioids' impact, and supporting real government solutions, we can begin to chart a path toward change. This isn't just about policy, it's about morality, about choosing compassion and determination over indifference. I want to hear from you. How has fentanyl touched your community? What solutions do you believe could make a difference? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this message resonates, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay connected to these urgent conversations. Don't miss our next video on community-driven solutions, where we'll explore how neighborhoods are stepping up to turn hope into action. Together, we can build a future where no one is left behind.